My beautiful freaks, this is my season 1 review of Stranger Things. So, quick note, I will not be discussing the plot in depth or the characters. I will not have a spoiler-free section and a none. This is all spoilers. This is more just things that stood out to me in a good way or a negative way. And then I'll have prediction section and a questions that I have going into season 2. So, before I start with all that, I did watch several episodes, I don't remember how many, of the first season of Stranger Things when it first came out. I don't remember much, and I've seen some things, I've seen some short videos from the show, I've seen some memes and stuff of Stranger Things. It's kind of hard to avoid. There's some things that I know going into it. I remember 11 having powers. I don't remember what powers. I remember and knew about the Demogorgon and the Upside Down and how they have a connection to Dungeons and Dragons. I don't remember what they're called in Dungeons and Dragons. They're called something else. I know they are things, and because of that, one of my predictions for season 2 is connected to that. I will talk about that when I get to my predictions. I also remember that the lab was the creepiest part of the show for me, and I remember it being scary-ish, but not like horror. So that's what I remember from the show. My expectations going into the show was it was horror adjacent because I remember being scary-ish. I also expected them not to talk to each other. A lot of shows like this have that. I think it was done really well in this show. Like all shows with a mystery have different characters learning different things, but they don't talk to each other. And a lot of shows you're like, you would just talk to each other. There's no real rhyme or reason to talk to each other or believe each other on certain things. I think it was done really well because of the supernatural and because the kids met Elle while they were out. I get they're in trouble. She's telling you like you can't tell anyone side. I get the Joyce side of things, like when her and her son were talking, and then later on when she was with the sheriff. I get because she has mental illnesses in the past, and you're seeing different characters at different points like not believe her on things because of that. So when Jonathan stopped talking to her about like her and Jonathan stopped working together on things, I got it. So when they came together later on, it was really cool that like someone else confirmed what she was saying. So he's like, oh no, my mom was telling the truth, I didn't listen. And I also get when John and Nancy are working together, I get John not wanting to bring in the mum because the mum has had mental health issues and is already on the brink because her son is missing, that you don't want to add more to it. I get that. Like I really like the reasons why they didn't communicate with each other, and I loved that they did, and how they did was really cool. Like when Jonathan and Nancy was arrested and Jonathan's like, you're not gonna believe me, but he tells him anyway, and then they learn that four of them were working on the same thing. And like I think the way they kept them apart and the way they brought them together with the information they had was a really solid way of doing it, and that you can understand the reasoning behind it. With some shows you don't get that reasoning, they just don't talk to each other. Also, we go on to the next season, and then like all the people that Jonathan and Nancy, Mike, Elle and Joyce, if they don't talk to each other, knowing that they've talked to each other and worked together in the last season, I'm gonna be a little upset because a lot of shows do that. One of the things that I really loved that was really small was Benny the diner guy when he first meets Elle just after she escaped, and then the science military people after he called social services came and killed him. Even though it wasn't directly and drastically important to the plotline, I think because it was so early on that not only does it show 11 but us as like the audience that the stakes are high. This is life and death, and also shows the ruthlessness of the people trying to find Elle. Like she is the main goal, she's important, this is the only thing that matters to them, people don't matter to them. And it shows the brutality of the people that the main cast people we're rooting for are against, but it also shows that not only 11 wanting kids to tell no one because it's life and death, it also shows that the show is not afraid to kill people, which is also a Barbara thing. I feel like there's not much to her character, but I feel like Barbara was also to show that, but with the Demogorgon. Like, show that Will's life is in immediate danger. It's killed someone now. We know, or at least close to kill. I know that you don't see her dead until like when Elle's looking, but like you can tell that she's dying a lot earlier than that. And Will, like several times we mentioned that he's a good hider, which probably helped him last. He used the attack instead of the protect in the Dungeons & Dragons session, and he was honest to Mike about the role. So you can tell that he's gonna be strong-headed, hidden, and when he can communicate with people like his mom, he tells the truth. Even though we don't know much about him, he was a really strong character, like compared to some of the other characters, mainly because you could tell his personality and character even though he wasn't there most of the show. It was really cool how they did that, and I found it really unique and very well written for you to get a sense of a character you're not even seeing. Talking about well written, I think it was really well done. Like Dustin and Lucas were really well done. Like a lot of shows have a really hard time writing kids, and they always just not seem like kids. You could see them as kids. Like most shows you can see and you can hear the adult writing the kids. This actually felt like kids. I don't know how they did it, but it was really well done. And I've mentioned the group of kids. That leads to my first issue with the show, which is my biggest issue, but also probably one that is the complete opposite of most people's views on the show, is that I dislike Mike and Elle being together. Like when they first meet, she knew nothing of the world, so he was teaching her. So he's a teacher or a parent. Like in my mind, it seems like an older brother or a parent or a teacher teaching her about this world. Like she didn't know what friends were, she could barely talk, she didn't know how the world works. So them potentially, definitely evolving into a relationship just doesn't sit right with me. The power dynamic there is not okay. I know they're kids, but there's still a power dynamic there that's not okay for a relationship. Like keeping her safe, he was keeping her safe, he was feeding her, he was teaching her about the world. So them getting that sort of like romantic subtext just sat weird with me. I'm like, that's not okay. And it may get better in the later seasons, but start of their relationship is always going to be that connection started when he was her teacher and her caregiver and her protector, and it's not okay. I'm not comfortable with it. It's also, I absolutely love Jonathan. I try not to because the whole picture thing of Nancy is really messed up. Like, it's not okay. But like the way he's with his mom and the way he talks about Will, and he's like he's a really good guy. I also feel like it was very out of character for him, and I feel like the only reason like it was done in the show was so that Steve would find out, grab the photos of her and of Barbara and rip it apart so that Nancy can find the photos, so later on Nancy can see the Demogorgon and they can get together, and like that's how the plot moves with their side of things. And I feel like that definitely seemed like choice made purely for the plot to move forward, and that's not bad, but like all the other things were to move the plot forward or to keep people apart all seemed very thought out and very well done. So that being so left field and out of character was just disappointment, and I feel like it's such a well done show that it feels kind of sad that that one wasn't fleshed out as well. But it's just such a small thing, like it's not a big deal, but it was a big deal to me because like I love Jonathan, and it was just really weird, and now I feel like I shouldn't love him because of that, even though I know it was purely for the plot. As a quick break, now I'm coming into my predictions and my question that I have going to season 2. So my predictions are certain things that have been spoiled, like I've seen the posters, that I know that 11's not dead because I've seen the posters of 11. Because I know a small bit, not too much, about Dungeons & Dragons, I know the type of creature the Demogorgon is not one, it is a lot of them. So I'm expecting there to be at some point more Demogorgons. And because I know Elle isn't dead, I predict Elle and Mike will end up in a relationship. Like I would hope it was just temporarily, and then when she grows and like becomes more a part of society, that like, it turns back into a friendship. But I feel like it's gonna be endgame. I don't want it to be, if I'm being honest, but I do think that they will get together at the very least. And also the very obvious prediction is that the Sheriff Hopper is feeding Elle, because when he put the food in the little thing in the woods, he put Eggos in, which everyone knows that Elle's favourite food of all time. But talking about Hopper leads into my first question is, what the hell is going on with Hopper and the science lab people? Like, he got in their car, like, is he feeding Eleanor Woods to help her because he lost his daughter, or is he feeding Eleanor Woods to find her for the science lab people? Like, that's my fear. Like, obviously Will has a connection still with the Upside Down, but does that mean that it's still killing him? What is happening with Will there? I don't know. And I had a theory, which while watching season 1, I don't think is gonna be a thing, but I thought that maybe the science lab people intended to open the gate, but it also seems like now that they didn't. I guess my question there is, did they mean to open it, or was it just a mistake? And how many people has Al killed? We know there was 2 while she was still trapped in the science lab building thing. We know that there was 6 during the fight at the school, but then she also flipped that van. How many people were in the van? Did any of them die? Like, is there more people that she's directly killed? But there's definitely at least 8 because of the 6 in the school and the 2 at the lab. This is my very special, unique part. There will be things that may be a little controversial, so if you don't want to deal with that sort of stuff, this is where you cut off. This is where you stop if you don't want to hear my thoughts on something that may be controversial. If you do, welcome. So this one is about guns. In season 1 of Stranger Things, that as an Australian who now lives in America, just could tell was very American. Like the fact that at the very first episode, near the start, before Will gets taken to the Upside Down, he walks into the tool shed and just picks up the gun and loads it like he knows what he's doing, which is really weird to me because, like, not only is there just a gun sitting around with ammo anyone can get to, especially Will, who's a kid, but the fact that Will knew how to load it was a bit frightening. Knowing that a kid can just walk into a building and load a gun was a little weird. Like, I get that it's common here in America, and it was not a handgun, so it's not as localized to America. Like, you have hunting guns in Australia, but I just still don't think you have 10-year-old where it's just laying out. The other big thing is Will's and Jonathan's dad just had a gun sitting in his car loaded, and like Jonathan just, he knew that dad had a gun sitting in his car. And then Nancy and Jonathan both, who are still in high school, just went to the shop where they got like the bear traps and stuff. They bought so many rounds of bullets. I'm like, he's a teenager, would you not ask how he has a gun? And the fact that like he could get sold the bullets blew my mind, even though I live in America now. Like, I knew that there's gun shops you can just go in and buy ammo, and there's places like Walmart where you can buy guns and ammo in the same place you can buy alcohol. But I just never put 2 and 2 together, the fact that a teenager can just go in and buy it. It just blew my mind, and it's so weird. And like, I know every cop has a gun. Like in Australia, it's more like, at least where I grew up, the cops only had guns when they were raiding and doing things that they might need it. So I'm not used to guns. Like, I have a lot of family members that are, including myself, who have some mental health problems, and we're just like not a family that would own guns, could most likely use them on ourselves. So to just see them so openly and freely in a show just shows how normal they are here. It's just, the culture shock is just how common it is to someone have a gun and for kids to be around them, like in America compared to Australia. That was the big difference, and that was my thing. Like, they're so easy available. It's just different in America compared to Australia. So that's my small bit. I have some personal things that have happened with guns, make me a little more opinionated on this topic. So that was a lot, but see you in my season 2 review. Bye!